Another scenario is, for example, the client has a vague idea of what they want, right? But they don't know exactly how to express it, and the designer therefore doesn't get it, right? So the designer is going to produce options, and the client just doesn't like any of them.
This is very, 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 very common. And it's partially because of the nature of the work. Again, no one knows what's going to happen at the end of the project, what the project's going to be. There's a big question mark out there, right? So there's some kind of trial and error that's built into the process to a certain degree. I will say that very often I see it happening way too much and way more than it needs to happen. Now, why is this the case? Well, it's problematic. Why is it problematic? It's problematic because for the client, it can become frustrating.
Exhausting.
It can also become expensive if the architect is charging for it. And for the architect, it is also equally, if not more frustrating, and also can be expensive for the architect if you're absorbing the cost of redoing stuff.
Well, it's exhausting too. It kind of kills the mojo of the process. It's like you're just retrying every time and you don't feel like you're making progress.
There is a momentum and a life to the project and how it feels. And you need to keep the ship afloat. And what happens is when you have to repeat things too many times or something weird happens like that, things start to sink. It's not good.
Frustration shows up. People get tired.
It's not good. You got to keep the pace. And that's actually a lot of what the architect does is kind of move things around gently, shift things so that everything stays kind of afloat. So creating a whole bunch of options, on the one hand, can sound great. Oh, we're exploring a bunch of different things, but there's a limit to that before the process gets kind of tainted or poisoned.
And oftentimes that comes around when maybe the research process at the very beginning wasn't really thoroughly done.
Yeah.
Meaning there is still some guesswork happening when some of the questions should have been answered during the research process.
Yeah. Again, that's why in the very beginning, we try to get as much information as possible because we're going to use that to power the decision-making in the design process. Of course, there's a limit to that as well. You can't just sit down for 20 hours straight and download all the information from client to architect. It is, if we could do that somehow, that'd be great. It would solve a lot of problems, but we can't do that, right? And it takes time for people to reflect and think about what they actually want or why they need something. Or it's like, oh yeah, I forgot. Like there was this aspect of whatever space that's important. It takes time because of the amount of decisions and aspects of a home or a building.
The other thing could be that maybe the communication between the architect and the client isn't really well established. Like there is some kind of missing information between the two. Therefore, we just keep guessing, searching and guessing.
That's again why you need to hire the right person who gets you and you get them. And that's also why I always say, this is more of a tip for architects than anything else, is that usually when a client answers a question, there's several layers of information behind that answer that is probably more important than the answer they gave, right? And this applies to almost any conversation in the everyday format. And the architect really wants to know that deeper level of information. That's also why on here we talk about the why, the how, and the what as the layers, right? I don't want to know the what from the client. I don't want to know that they want this room to be red. I want to know why red. Then from that point, I'm going to find a better solution, or maybe red is the right solution. I don't know. But communication. So that's where the architect, they really has to be a good communicator, have good people skills. Because if I'm an architect and I'm talking to someone, a client, and they say something, if I'm not a good architect, and I go, okay, red, boom, I'm going to do red, or I misinterpret what you're saying. I want a space for my family. And I go, okay, that means this. And I go off in this direction. Waste of time, right? Most often, the issues with a design, the problems with a design scheme that someone proposes are not really in the details of the design. It's more about fundamental things. The correct lane to go down was not chosen. So research, communication, 100%. Okay, the third one is that the client doesn't know what they want until they see it. And the designer has to try and produce just a bunch of stuff